Hey, this is Sam. Today we're going to be talking about data analysis and arts funding in Canada. So, if you don't know already, I am an artist. I live in Quebec and I have a lot of artist friends. Now, artists are not the best at data analysis and big data, right? And recently there's been a lot of changes in funding. There's been more funding because of COVID, and that funding is going down. And there's a potential change in government in Canada. And there's a lot of fears of artists losing their funding, not really understanding where the money is going, if it's being effectively spent and allocated, and just generally kind of diving into where these millions or billions of dollars are going and where our tax money is going, basically, as well as, I'm looking at some of my friends that have fantastic projects that are not being funded. I'm actually going to apply for my funding in digital arts for the first time probably this year. And so there's a lot of question in this field. And I have a particular skill, which is data analysis. And so I thought, hey, what better use of my Saturday morning than drinking coffee and doing some data analysis on arts funding in Canada? And so here we are. Now, there's going to be two parts to this. The first one is I'm going to present basically what I did, which is amateurish, but I think helpful. And then the second part is I'm going to show you exactly how I got there technically so that you can learn Power BI, make it accessible to you and go even further in the investigation of the data if you wish to do so. All right, so let's look at the context. So Canada Arts Council gives us access to their data as open data, and it's generally great. But as I said, most artists, most art nerds are not good at data analysis. There is an organization called Canada Arts Data, which has created some Power BI templates already, or Power BI reports, I should say. And when you click on it, it goes to these reports, which, spoiler alert, it's not really good. Look at this. This is completely unusable. I can't even scroll. This is tiny. The way that the interface has been designed for this is just not conducive to being helpful, being understandable. If you're not an accountant, this is not really going to help you. This is just a wall of text, a wall of data. There's not really anything graphic in here. And as I mentioned, the user interface is just really not a fun thing to do, right? So there's some improvements required here. But instead of complaining to an organization, why not just do it ourselves in 30 minutes and we can flush them out of the way? Okay, so let's look at the data they give us. The first thing they give us is these tables in Excel. Now, this is not really useful because it's not the way that Power BI wants to read the data. And frankly, this is kind of unusable because it's split per tabs. And also, the best way to read through this would be to do a pivot table or to bring it in Power BI to make it dynamic. All right, now look at this. This is actually what we want. This is just a raw list of data, just a bunch of rows. I think there's 55,000 rows in here. Yeah, 50,000 rows in here. So this is exactly what we want. And let's look at where we got with this. So once you get all this data inside Power BI, it's just a matter of deciding how you want to look at it, right? Do you want to look at it per field of practice, per year, per area? How do you need to chop up this data? Real quick, if we remove this time filter, we see that there's data in 2016, 2017. However, I don't trust the data 2016 and earlier, and I have a hard time trusting the data in 2017. So I did put a filter to only start looking from January 1st, 2018. And so we're just looking at recent stuff, kind of eliminating old, incomplete data, and also it's going to reduce our scope and make it more digestible. Feel free to remove this filter, of course, if you want to go look into the past. All right, so first thing we should understand is that these are matrices, right? So a matrix means that it's not just a table with a bunch of rows, it's going to group the rows. So here we're looking at 318 million. If I expand this, we're going to see the breakdown per category, and then we're going to see the breakdown per organization. And I could keep adding new fields here or move these around, and it would just change the way that the matrix and the breakdowns go. So if you use these reports, make sure to drill up and drill down, whether you're using these two buttons here to do your navigation or whether you're drilling up here. Now notice too, when I drill down, the kind of color coding goes away when I drill down individually. But if I drill up and down as a group, the color coding comes back because everything is harmonized and open together. So you want color, just use the drill up and drill down and it'll be restituted for you. Okay, so here we have a pretty good idea of where the money is going per category, and you can sort that to look at the highest amount of money. If we look at this other column, it's going to look at a similar thing, but really it's allowing us a couple more filters, right? So we could look for an artist name in here. And one of the things I've done is I've combined the name of the artist with the pseudonym. So if there's only a name, there's going to be the name. If there's a name and there's a pseudonym, we're going to see it separated with a dash. So here in this case, it's a space gallery, and they decided they also wanted a pseudonym with the exact same thing. Okay, whatever. But the point is, if you're looking for an artist and you don't know their real name or you don't know their pseudonym, you'll be able to find it either or through this search button here. Now, the other obvious thing is there's a filter for province, right? So probably particularly interesting is going to be the funding that goes outside of Canada. Try to figure out, seems we're sending $17 million outside of Canada. And, you may want to audit, have a look at who these artists are. Now, something I've noticed a lot is, sometimes you look up these artists and you're like, okay, you got $200,000 or whatever. And sometimes there's like no trace of them on Google. There's no trace of what they did with the money. One of the things that's missing in the data is the name of the title of the project, right? So, some obvious questions we're going to have is this money making Canada look good on the international scene? Is it advancing these artists' career? Did they do something significant with that money? Do they even exist? Do they have an internet presence? Has there ever been an article written about them? And so forth. And, to be honest, it's kind of weird. Like when an artist has been living outside of Canada for like 5 years, like, are they coming back? Or why are we sending them our tax money to do that? So obviously some other folks that are more into the arts world will have a better political discussion on that that's more advanced than mine. I'm just making the data accessible, and I have my own very basic question, like, why are we spending $250,000 or $400,000 to somebody who lives outside of Canada for 3+ years? May want to spend it on ourselves or people that are going to come back to Canada. But those are questions that are now open for people to look at. And let's go dive deeper into the locations. So here we're sorting per location. And if we drill down, we'll see that the next step is the field of practice and then the name of the artist. So we can look back up at the top level and see a couple things, right? So first thing is some of these people don't have a location. That's kind of, where did this $27 million go? And another thing we see very clearly is that there are cities, there are areas, and then sometimes it just says moderate, weak, or strong metropolitan influence zone. Okay. There's also this anomaly, so territories outside of AR, whatever that means, or CAs. No metropolitan influence zone, so that's kind of funny. I guess that's a way of saying you live in the middle of nowhere. And then obviously you can go down all the way down to see who's getting the least amount of fundings in the regions. So, and then, obviously the biggest amount of funding, surprisingly, Ottawa and Gatineau is in there, or I should say Gatineau is in there. All right, so that's another set of data. And as usual, you can just open it up and go see who's getting the money, what year. You can see the data however you'd like to. Now, if we look at individual groups, all this table is doing is making these more graphical things And what we're doing with the filter is we're saying, hey, just look at recipient type group only. So this is pretty much the same data. It's just going to be kind of easier to navigate if all you care about is groups. Now myself, I care a lot about digital groups. So I'm going to click on the digital groups. And if I sort by total here, as it already is, I can kind of see who's getting the most money in the digital art world. Or I can also do it by visual arts to see which galleries are getting the most funding. Let me just move this along a little bit. Now, let's say I want to filter this and look at who, a particular gallery. I can't find them in here. I really care about a particular gallery. So I'm going to add a little slicer, drop it in here, and then drop my name pseudonym in there. And if I right click, if I click in here, I can just add the search. All right, so I've added the search button, or I can just click on any of these and I will see how much this group received, etc., and if they receive funding for multiple years, and so forth. All right, now let's look at the individual. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. If we look into the digital art world, we're going to drill this down, and then we can see the amount of funding per year, per artist, etc., and go look at the data. It's very interesting as an artist. There's not that much visibility at first into how much you should apply for if you're applying for a grant, and this gives a lot of visibility into that data. And then finally, we're going to get the same thing for organizations. So same as usual, you can add a search, you can add a slicer if you want. And here we're looking specifically at digital art and how much money organizations are getting per year. So there's a lot of data in here that you can go and analyze. Okay, one last thing. There's going to be, we already talked a lot about kind of like dirty data in here, anomalies, and there's a lot of them, right? There's the provinces, the locations that don't exist, the mix between cities and weak metropolitan areas or whatever the heck that is. And then there's the simple identification. So here I did a little bit of an audit in the data and I said, show me the names of organizations that have a tax number, but different names under them. So we see sometimes it's an organization that ended up changing the name of the organizations over the year. Sometimes it's simply a matter of not properly spelling the name the same. So here there's a comma, here there's no accent on the E, but this is obviously the same organization. And perhaps also the Morrison Helen Belkin Art Gallery, perhaps it's under the same tax number as UBC Press, or perhaps they changed the name of the gallery. Same thing here with the Doris McCarthy Art Museum of the University of Toronto. So just be careful when you are looking at an artist. There's going to be some variations, right? So human errors, the lack of cleaning up the data. I'm kind of surprised that Canada Arts Council allows people to submit under different names. You kind of figure that they would remember the name you submitted last year, or they would do a bit of data cleaning in there to control the data. And then, of course, sometimes an artist will apply as a different name, as a group, as well as an individual. So when you see the amount of funding that an organization receives, just be careful that because of this kind of dirty data, this lack of cleaning in the data, there may be some issues in terms of really getting the whole picture. All right, so I'll be making this file available in the link through a Google Drive, so feel free to look at it. As I said, this is like maybe 45 minutes of work. It's not like I'm not doing this paid. This is just to spread the knowledge out there for journalists and art critics or art thinkers that care about funding in Canada. Feel free to use it. I'm going to be doing a second video to show you how I did it and how you can go further in learning Power BI for this exact function. So I hope this was helpful and start some conversation. And I wish you a great day. Bye.